Welcome, everybody, to a new edition of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and to my side is my co-host, my friend, Tommy Highway. Tommy?
Folks, I'm Tommy Highway. I want to thank everybody for coming out. As always, we have a wonderful show for you and a very special guest, folks. Her name is Lynn Wallington. She's an artist, an experiencer, a therapist, a ufologist. Very, very cool lady. You're going to love what she has to say in her stories. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure.
It's really good to have you here. I've seen you a lot over on other people's channels. And I kind of think that you are a rising star as a female ufologist, and we're glad to have you in the field. We are.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. That's very sweet.
Okay, first question that I have for you this evening is what we talked about the other evening during our pre-show chat. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in ufology in the first place?
Yeah, of course. So I have had paranormal experiences my whole life, or at least I thought they were paranormal experiences. And then I ended up getting my degree in psychology, and all of this comes into play. So I got my degree in psychology. I worked for Harvard Med School, worked with clients who had psychosis. Really enjoyed it. Have done different types of therapy, psychopharmaceutical research as well. And in my 30s, had my own experience where I remembered it as a very lucid dream. And it was just a snapshot of the dream. And it was a mantis being standing there with two small grays. And prior to this, I had had no interaction with kind of the UFO community or field in general. I always never doubted that extraterrestrials existed. I knew the universe was so vast, it would be impossible for them not to exist. So I had no doubt about that, just simply really didn't have a ton of interest in it, or not even, I wouldn't say it wasn't interest, but it was just a lack of knowledge, I guess, about the UFO community. And so this definitely piqued my interest. And I said, okay, I got to figure out what this is. Prior to that, I had seen a light being when I was getting certified as a Reiki practitioner. You have to go through what's called an attunement, and basically it kind of opens you up to the universal flow of energy, and so that you're able to kind of channel it and direct it. And we had to practice on each other, and I saw this light being in the corner. And so that was, I could kind of understand that. I was involved with like the new age community at that point in time. So a light being wasn't anything, really kind of crazy for me. But then when I saw the mantis being, I was like, okay, there's something different going on here. So I was like, I'm just going to do what I do best. I'm going to research this. And I went into the internet and I was just like, let me just find out who can I talk to about this? Because I had no idea. And I sort of stumbled upon the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, aka FREE. And I ended up speaking to Ray Hernandez, who was one of the co-founders. And he and I chatted for quite a while. And I told him what I had experienced. And he was just like, oh, yeah, that's actually really common, the way that it happened. And started talking to me about this. And it was absolutely fascinating because, like I said, I had no introduction into this world before that. So for me, this was just all brand new. And I was absolutely fascinated by it. And then he started asking me questions about myself and found out I did have a background in psychology and had worked as a therapist. And he said, hey, there are a lot of experiencers out there, and a lot of them are looking for support. It's very difficult to find, especially someone who has a background in psychology. They're very hesitant to go because they don't want to get diagnosed as delusional or psychotic or anything of that nature. And these are, very real experiences these people are having, and there's a need for more support. And this was a little bit more than 10 years ago. So now there's a bunch of different support groups, which is absolutely amazing. You can find one that really works well with you. But at that point in time, there weren't as many. It was difficult to find them. And so he said, we're looking to kind of develop our support arm of the organization, and we really would like a support program. We have sort of this idea in place as to what we want to do. We have Mary Rodwell, who's one of our co-founders, who, if everybody doesn't know who Mary is, go look her up. She's amazing. Thank you, Renee. She's amazing. She works with experiencers in Australia like yourself. She's a therapist. She also does regressions, which was all very new to me as well. Would you like to come on board and help sort of develop this support program and run it? And I said, yeah, absolutely, because this was just fascinating. It's fascinating. And this took place over a couple of conversations. And so I did, and I came on and I went down every rabbit hole that I could possibly go down because I wanted to know, okay, if somebody comes to me with such and such a scenario, I want to be able to talk to them about it, or at least have heard of it to a certain extent. And and I had a picture of me as Princess Leia for anyone who's wondering what that was in reference to, because I'm commander of the rebellion, of course. So I started working with experiencers and just kind of didn't stop. I was doing it publicly for quite a while, and then took a step back and was doing it a little more behind the scenes. But yeah, I've been doing it for about 10 plus years now. So I have worked with hundreds of experiencers and had the honor of working with hundreds of experiencers, I should say, because I really love experiencers. They're, to me, the backbone of this community. They really bring so much to the table. And not to say that ufology, kind of the nuts and bolts ufology, isn't important. It is as well. But they're two different arms of the same, thing. Can't think of the word, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yes, thank you. And so, but that's the one that really is special to me. And not just because I was an experiencer myself, which I had sort of come to realize over the course of time working with experiencers. The more I learned, the more I recognized, oh, some of these things that I thought were paranormal or maybe experiencers. And some things that I thought were just weird as a kid, like waking up with my pajamas on backwards or inside out or both or off and folded up on a chair, which as a kid you never would do. Right in the middle of the night, you're not going to wake up and neatly fold up your pajamas and put them on a chair. No, they'd be in a pile on the floor. So all of those things were weird, or wake up in really weird positions. I've told this before, but it's just the weirdest one. So I'm going to say it again. I woke up standing up in the middle of my bed when I was a teenager, and that will jolt you awake when you look down and you're like, oh my God. Oh, you think that like falling off a cliff feeling is bad when you wake up and see that there's nothing like around you. It's very odd. It's definitely jarring. So I had all of these kind of weird experiences, but just thought, okay, maybe I'm just a weird sleeper, like didn't think anything of it until I started learning about experiencers. And I realized a lot of these are signs of experiences. And it all started to put together. I put it all together, all the pieces together, and realized that what I thought were paranormal experiences maybe weren't necessarily so paranormal as in like ghost paranormal. So yeah, that was kind of how I got into it. And then I really just lucked into meeting a bunch of incredible people when I worked with Free. We also worked in conjunction with an organization called Starborn Support. And so that was Debbie and Audrey Hewins, the twins. And I got to know Debbie and Audrey really well and became friends with them. And so they used to run a conference every year out of Portland, Maine, called Experiencer Support, or was it Experiencer Support? I think so. And they would do a camp out afterwards for the people that they were friends with and close to. So after the conference, we would all drive to their parents' lake house in Maine and have a huge experiencer camp out. There would be like 30 people there. It was amazing. And I was still brand new to all of this, but oh my God, I was surrounded by all of these amazing people. I mean, there was Grant Cameron was there, Peter Robbins was there, Tom Reed was there, Chris Bledsoe was there, R. Keith Andrews was there. Kathleen Martin was Kathleen at the camp out? I think so. Denise Stoner was there. There's so many people that now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I had like sort of lucked into this amazing camp out. And I had no idea who these people were at the time. So I joke around saying like I was sitting next to Chris Bledsoe around the campfire for an hour, had no idea who he was. And we talked about his art the whole time. And now I kick myself thinking all the questions that I could ask him. But, that might have been refreshing for him. But yeah, it was amazing. So I really just kind of lucked into meeting all of these incredible people. Travis Walton was there too. And then through them, I met, like Ben Hansen, I got to meet him. And yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. But so I've really been very fortunate in knowing the people that I know and getting to meet everyone. So that was like my beginning, my introduction. It was a bit of a whirlwind into this community, but it was absolutely amazing. And you guys are so very sweet. Thank you so much.
I have to say that the people that you met actually are contacts now because you actually met them.
Yes.
So you have an inroad. You can say, "Do you remember back when we had that camp out? Do you think maybe you could come on my channel and do an interview? You know, that would help you."
Trust me, I'm in touch with most of them still. I never lost touch with them. Yeah. Peter, I just interviewed not that long ago. When I was still on SOR, I had him on. I've been texting Travis, and he's going to come on when his schedule slows down a little bit. He's a little crazy at the moment. And Ben is under contract. Don't worry. I've reached out to most of them. So
Yeah,
I am
we've
on it.
reached out to Travis too. So yeah, we
Yeah.
understand.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually very interested in that what you were mentioning there about waking up, standing on your bed. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, it was very much just that. It was time to wake up in the morning. It wasn't like in the middle of the night or anything. It was just time to wake up. I think I had to get ready for school that day. My alarm clock went off. I woke up and was like, oh my gosh, scared awake, like, what is happening? I think my heart was racing, it was probably like 130 beats per minute at that point. And I was just like, what just happened? And it was just kind of like, I don't know. It takes a lot to really throw me. So even as a teenager, I was kind of like, well, this is weird. And then just kind of went on with my day. So I wish there was more to the story than that, but I'm just kind of like, go with the flow kind of a person for the most part. But it was odd.
So you didn't recall how you actually got there?
Nope. Just woke up like that. It was just like you wake up in bed. I just woke up. I was standing up, however. So it was just kind of what was I dreaming about? I think was my reaction. Like, what in the world? Yeah, it was really strange.
Do you have any recollection or waking memories of your experiences?
I do now. Yeah. So when I was in my 20s, I had a memory. I didn't recognize at the time that it would be related to any of this because this was before I saw the mantis being and even the light being. Esmeralda, it had to be traumatic. It was jarring, but like I said, I kind of was just like, all right, and went on with my day. So when I was in my 20s, I had a memory come back of going to school. So my dad was in the Air Force. So I grew up on Air Force bases for the most part. And I had a memory of going to school on an Air Force base. I remember the white van that would come and pick me up. It would take me to the Air Force, the school on the base. I remembered what the building looked like, single story, red brick, kind of your typical military style base building. And I was like, wait a second, what school was that? Because I remembered all of the schools that I went to, and I knew I was young, like elementary school age. And I was like, okay, I only went to 2 elementary schools because we lived in Saudi Arabia for about 6.5 years. So a lot of my elementary school age was there, and I knew it wasn't there. And before that, we were in Florida. So I was like, I know I went to the one school in Florida. So what was the school? So it was driving me crazy. And so I called my stepmom and I said, hey, what was that school that I went to on the base? I remember. And she goes, what are you talking about? And I was like, I remember I was young, probably like elementary school age. I remember being picked up by this white van. I was brought to a school on the base, but I can't for the life of me remember what school that was or like why I went there instead of the other one in Florida. She was like, what are you talking about? You never went to school on a base. And I was like, no, I know I did. I remember it. And she was like, nope, you didn't. And I just kind of went, okay, that's really weird. But that always stuck out in my memory. And, later as I talked to people about these things and said, I had this really weird thing. I don't know if it has anything to do with anything. This is when I was still kind of piecing everything together. And the more I would tell them about my stepmom, the more they were kind of like, interesting. And as time went on, and I'll get into that once I started getting into my experiences a little more, they were just like, I think she was your handler. And I was kind of like, she was my what? Say what? No, what? Like I had no idea what they were talking about. And so that was kind of like, I don't know what that is. And then when they explained it to me, I was just kind of like, why would they? No, that doesn't make any sense. And so after a while of working with experiencers, I said, you know what? And I had also become certified to do regressions on people. So I had done some regressions on people. And I said, you know what? I have this weird memory with the mantis beings. Maybe I should try a regression. And I should also say, so when I told you before that I went down every rabbit hole I could to understand experiencers, well, I worked with one self-proclaimed super soldier. And I'm not going to say who he is because he's actually pretty well known, but he wasn't well known at the time. And he freaked me out and like made me really uncomfortable. And I wanted nothing to do. I hadn't looked into super soldiers and I hadn't looked into the secret space program. And I had 2 conversations with him and I said, I am never working with anyone who's a super soldier or a secret space program. I want nothing to do with it. Someone else can handle that. And would pass them along to, we didn't get many anyways, but pass them along to one of the, at that point, there was another therapist who was on board with us and passed them along to her. And didn't research anything into it. I just had this intense reaction to it and wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. So coming up to my regression, I said, I should probably have one just to see what they're like. And maybe I'll get some info about this mantis moment because I couldn't remember. I used to be. I'm not there anymore, Renee. So I was like going in expecting, okay, let's find out about this mantis being. I came out going absolutely not, because the whole thing was secret space program, all of it. And I was like, nope, no. That was my response to it. Literally out loud, nope. Because that was the last thing I absolutely wanted it to be. Because to me, that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. And that was one thing, like, we all kind of have that line that we draw where it's just like, I can believe in a galactic federation, but a secret space program, that's ridiculous, and that was my line. And I was like, no. But remember, I didn't do any research into it. So I only knew like very surface level stuff. And by that, I mean that people believe there was one and it kind of developed behind the scenes. That was the extent of my knowledge about the secret space program. So here I had all this information that came out and I was able to do some research. And I saw a shuttlecraft, which I had drawn out, that it was actually my second regression, but that was only a couple months after the first one. That was in 2014, both of those. And just this past year, when I was prepping for a show, I was looking into advanced aircraft and I saw this next generation air dominance. There was this artist rendition of it because I love planes. I love jets too. I grew up around them. And so I saw this artist rendition for the next generation air dominance. And I was like, it looked almost exactly like what I had drawn out. Now, this plane hasn't even been built yet, well, at least not that we're aware of. I'm sure it has been built, but it hadn't even, it's not in the public sphere. And they don't have any pictures of it. All they have is this artist rendition. And I was just kind of like, ugh, I got chills when I saw that one. And then some things, like I said, my job, when I was in my regression, my job working on the craft, I had 2 jobs, but one of them was an interfacer. And that was the term I used. Now that's a lot more common term, but you got to remember this is 10 years ago. And they were like, okay, well, what is that? I said, well, I communicate with the extraterrestrials that are nonverbal. I can telepathically communicate with them. I act as an interpreter for the humans and those extraterrestrials that can't speak. And then that term interfacer, I kept hearing it come up more and more as the years went on. And I was like, okay, that's a little weird. And so it was just things like that really kind of validated some of these experiences that was just kind of like, oh, I don't know. But a lot of them still weren't making a lot of sense. Like there was a memory that I had where I was on craft and I walked by this woman. She was a human female in this container. It looked like egg shaped and it was filled with this amber colored liquid. And she had this weird kind of umbilical, like I described it as an umbilical like device because it was hooked up to like her abdomen. She was awake. And I remember hearing in my head, help me, what's going on? And I could feel kind of her panic. And my response was very cold and very unfeeling towards her. And I said, you'll be fine. And I just kept walking. And I was just kind of, once I had that memory, I was like, why did I respond like that? That's horrible. Like, I'm a therapist. How could I possibly respond to someone reaching out to me in that like kind of cold, unfeeling way? So these things, like there were things like that just weren't adding up to me. And so it was about 7 years of processing this information. And I finally realized people have had mind control programming. They have had programs like MK Ultra done on them. I've heard of this a little bit. So I researched it and I realized a lot of the things in my past coincided with things that people who were in the program experienced. In my first regression, at the very beginning, I was a child and I was brought up onto a craft. I saw my dad there. I was brought into what looked like a classroom. And there were these little like plasma balls kind of floating above a table. They were like a light blue in color, and there was like energy kind of swirling. It was purely made out of energy. There was no container for it. And they had me learn to try and manipulate it using my hands and my mind, but I wasn't touching it. So it was more mental than anything. And I realized that there are a lot of kids, especially military kids, who they test to see their psychic abilities, because a lot of the people that are recruited into these programs are very psychic people, and a lot of them are military kids because they have easy access to military kids. And so there was all these things that were adding up, and then I learned about how they create altars in MK Ultra, and I had to kind of look into this, but it was actually also a concept that was really familiar to me too, being a therapist, because I knew dissociative identity disorder, which is also known as multiple personality disorder, where someone experiences some trauma, the personality splits, the one person experienced the trauma, the other personality didn't. So I understood these psychological concepts, and I looked into it more and more. And one of the ways that they go about it is sexual trauma before the age of 5, which I experienced. And now when I experienced this, I have no emotional reaction to it whatsoever. And that's another weird kind of skill that I had learned when I was a teenager, was to turn my emotions off completely, so I can be completely numb. And when I say like no emotions, I mean nothing. Nobody matters. Nothing matters. I'm like a robot. And it was a weird skill, but I kind of thought everybody was able to do it until I realized like later, oh no, they're not. And it's not just like putting your emotions aside. It literally is no feeling whatsoever. So it's not a great place to put yourself into, because like when you have kids and animals and a significant other, I literally feel nothing for them as well. So it's literally no emotion whatsoever. So all of these things I started putting together and talking to people, and I realized that I had been involved in this program. And the more I started to think about it, the more memories started coming back. And so that started to make more sense to me. And then I looked back at my stepmom, who I told you people had said before, oh, she's your handler. And I, in context, realized, oh, I think they were right, because I always thought she was just crazy, but she would record all of our phone calls in the house. My older brother, who's now a Green Beret, he realized every time when we were teenagers, so this is back before there were cell phones, so you just had the landlines. Every time you would pick up the phone to make a call or to receive a call, there was a click on the line, and he noticed it. And so when our parents were out of the house one day, he went in their bedroom and was looking around, and under my stepmom's side of the bed, he found a tape recorder. And this is back, when the old digital tape recorders that are this big, and it had a device hooked up to it. So every time the phone was picked up, the device would trigger the recorder, and the recorder would start recording. And he showed me, he played phone calls that we had. And she would also follow me. She would tail me when I was out. And I remember seeing her, but I always acted like I didn't see her, because I could tell she was trying to do it without me noticing. And then when I got home, she would interrogate me and try to figure out where I had been, or try to catch me in a lie. Was I going to be honest and tell her exactly what she already knew? But because I already knew that she was following me, I knew exactly what to tell her. And she would always just kind of create an air of chaos in the house. She was very high energy, would go off at the slightest thing, just really created an environment of stress to keep that adrenaline flowing. And so when I look back and put all of these things together, I realized that's part of the programming. That's part of the conditioning that they do in these programs. And you need a handler. You need someone who's there with you to make sure that the programming continues. Basically, it's mind control, mind manipulation. And so that's kind of, it's a nutshell, but there's definitely more. It's a very long answer to your question. Yes, some of the memories have returned spontaneously. I also had another memory that spontaneously returned, which was, I remember being on a planet, we had landed. I was on a ship, we landed, we came out. We were wearing tan tactical gear. We were able to breathe the air because we had helmets on, but more you would see combat helmets. It wasn't astronaut helmet. And we just started shooting these gecko-like reptilian beings that were human size. And we were just massacring them. So yeah, that was a memory that kind of spontaneously came back. It was really strange, but Uh, yeah, and I remember my base personality, and this was another way that I kind of realized that I had mind control, because what my base personality, which would be me, Lynn, you're talking to me right now, um, came to a little bit in that moment. Now, my body was still responding. I was still shooting and I was still killing them. But I remember turning to the side and looking to this human soldier behind or beside me, and we made eye contact. And I remember thinking, why are we doing this? Like, I had no idea what we were doing or well, I knew we were shooting them and killing them, but I had no idea why we were doing this. And then all of a sudden I like snapped back. But I was still shooting them the entire time. So my body was still responding to what it was supposed to. So it was little things like that, which before hadn't made any sense to me. But once I had the realization of the mind control element, I understood more what was going on, and it all made much more sense.
Thomas asked, was the mind control telepathic?
No, it's done. There are techniques and there are ways of doing it. So what they do is, so when they create altars, so like I was saying, a lot of the times it's actually, it used to be in the like 60s when they were first learning about this, and you can look up MK Ultra documents. A lot of them are declassified. They use drugs a lot of the time, but then they realized drugs and hypnosis, and then they realized trauma was a very efficient way to do it. And sexual trauma is very easy to do, especially, so you take a child 5 years and younger is the most beneficial. And I did do research into this myself about dissociative identity disorder. So I looked up and found there were several articles or several studies that showed people with dissociative identity disorder had sexual trauma. Like 90% of them, 50% of those had sexual trauma before the age of 5. So this is something that even in the psych field, we understand this comes into play. And obviously the government realizes this too, or I should say Black Ops. It's not like it's Congress is doing this. These are Black Ops programs. And so a lot of times it's sexual trauma before the age of 5. In that moment, your mind reacts in a very protective manner and often will split. And so basically they're literally fracturing your mind, and you create an alter personality because it's the mind's way of protecting you. And our minds are very protective of us. It's a natural thing that we do. And our minds are amazing. They're amazing, amazing things. And so you become two personalities in one, basically. And usually one is not aware of the other. And so when they do that, they then are able to program you. You could even think of it as in terms of even like something as simple as Pavlov. For those that aren't familiar, Pavlov's dogs, we hear about that, right? Where he trained his dogs, every time you feed them, he would ring a bell. Kept doing this repeatedly over and over and over again. And because the dogs would salivate when they knew they were getting fed, he would ring the bell, they would learn to salivate even when there was no food, because their mind or they had made that connection. And it's something as simple as that. And so they create triggers. So it'll be a word, a phrase, it could be tune. And when they do that, it triggers, yes, Ange got it. It triggers your alternate personality. So then they can tell you, okay, that's the person that they're going to train. And there are different levels of training. They can train you to have a photographic memory. They have sex slave training where you can use sex to manipulate people. You can use it for blackmail, for drug administration. And not everybody has all the different levels. It depends on what purpose they're going to use you for. I was trained it's called Delta. There are different levels, are all Greek letters, alpha, beta, delta. I was Delta, which was assassin training. Then there's also Theta, which is psychic and occult training, which I also had as well. And then there's Sigma, which is the self-destruct training. So there's these are kind of like their fail safes. So it's a suicidal programming or other self-destructive behaviors like alcohol abuse, drug abuse. And so when they trigger you, your alternate personality comes out. So say, Thomas, say you say a phrase to me, this phrase works with me. You say this phrase, my alternate comes out. Now you can use, and they did this during I think it was World War II. Actually, they figured this out because they could use it as a foolproof way to transmit secret messages. So you trigger a person, their alter comes out, you give them the message, Then you put them back, you put the alternate away, the base personality comes out. Now you tell that person, Tim, okay, I've already triggered you. I've given you the info. You have no idea that this has happened. And I say, Tim, I want you to go to, such and such a city, go to London, meet with Colonel so-and-so. He'll give you your orders there. Now, Colonel so-and-so is going to be waiting for you, and he knows your trigger as well. When you get there, he says the trigger, your other personality comes out, tells him the information, because that personality knows this is what it's supposed to deliver. And then you bring the base personality back. So if you're ever caught, you're captured by the enemy, and even if they torture you, you couldn't give them the information because it's your base personality. You have no idea that this even happened to you. So this is all done very deliberately, and it doesn't have to be. It's not telepathic at all. These are psychological tactics that they use on people. Sorry,
sounds to me like it's programmed into you. So
it is. Yeah.
You become accustomed to the trigger, and that's what separates your personality. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
That must mean that there must be a lot of sleepers that are out there.
Oh, there's plenty of people that have no idea that this has even happened. They have no clue. And a lot of the people, like some people have asked me, well, how could you, aren't you mad that your stepmom was your handler? And I said, how could I be mad at her? She was also programmed as well, more than likely. In my regression, I saw my dad on Craft. I can't be mad at my dad. My dad was probably programmed as well, because my initial reaction was, how could my dad let this happen to me? How could he be there and know that this was going on? But the reality is he was probably programmed to all different levels of this. There's programming, and it's only like the very top echelon who has any idea of what's actually going on, because everyone else is programmed to a certain extent. So you can't, who do you hold responsible? You can't hold them responsible. And I can't say, well, I'm not responsible because I was programmed, but the person right above me, I'm really going to hold them responsible. I can't. They're programmed as well. It's very clever the way they go about it. It's ingenious.
Yes, it seems to me like a lot of people were taken advantage of, actually.
Yeah.
To facilitate the black operation. I do know that MK Ultra is continuing to this day, and a lot of people are still being conditioned. Have you recalled any more information through your regressions?
With respect to the programming, or just in experience?
Your experiences?
What I have recalled is more of some of the mundane things, like the day-to-day activities. Everybody wants to know about the assassins, and the assassin stuff, and that I don't remember, other than the one that I told you about, where I was on the planet. I know that we work with reptilians. We work with some grays too, but the ship that I was on was a very military ship. It was a military ship. It wasn't very military. It's a military ship. So we have what we call reptilian co-forces. They certainly don't work for us. They would never work for us. So we work with them, and they were there. So I worked with a lot of reptilians. I really love the reptilians. I know a lot of people are very afraid of them, but I work very well with them. So I remember a lot of that. I remember so as an interfacer, you really are only needed when there are, aliens coming on craft that you need to interpret for. So it's not like a full-time thing. So one of the things that I also did when I worked there was I worked with, kind of like alien creatures, animals, that we would get. And I worked in a lab with them. They were alive, and I would take care of them, but I would also study them to understand their biology and their different characteristics. I remember I have a memory of being in the lab with the animals, and someone came in and said, "We need you right away." So we went into this other room. There was this woman kind of thrashing on a table. It was like a medical room. And so I said, okay, and sedate her. So they sedated her, and I used this machine that was like this overhead machine to scan her body. And I could see that there was a parasite kind of intertwined in her intestines, but also wrapped around her uterus. And I was able to get it out. And I remember saying, don't kill it, put it in a jar. I'm going to study it. So I remember weird things like that. I do remember working with the reptilians. I remember, so when you interface with a being, oh, thank you, Chris. When you interface with a being, not only are you able to telepathically communicate with them, but you're also empathetic, and you have a more empathetic connection to them. So you sort of see things through their eyes. And so I understand their society, I think, in a different way, because these are, everybody talks about the Draco reptilians are the big bad guys. And yeah, some of them aren't great, but there are some humans that aren't great either. So I'm not going to judge an entire species on that, just, the ones that aren't so great. But their society is actually not that different than ours. It's a hierarchical society. It's very militaristic. It's a patriarchal society. They are very very keen on capability. So if you are a capable person, hi Cyan, then they have more respect for you. And so because I was very good at what I did, I was very good at being a killer. And that's how I remembered it, by the way, which was one of the things that led me to believe that it was very true. Not only did I feel the moment I had that memory, it literally came to my head, I was a killer. One, I sat back and looked at it from an objective perspective and said, well, psychologically speaking, if you're going to program someone and you want them to try to not remember these things, make it shameful, make it a horrible thing for them to remember. But because I have this like non-emotional type thing a lot of the time, I didn't react in the slightest. I was just kind of like, well, turning your emotions off will come in really handy with that. That was my only reaction to it. And just kind of like, yep, I believe it. I know that was true. And that was one of the few things that I did not doubt in the slightest was absolutely true. So, and I knew that I was really good at it. And so I know the reptilians respected that. And that is why I got to work with them as well, because I was able to communicate. Now, some can communicate verbally. They're not all telepathic. They can communicate verbally as well. But because I'm able to communicate with them telepathically, I was able to learn more about their society, or just to understand it, emotionally understand it.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Tommy. I think Tommy lost his internet connection.
Oh, hopefully he'll be able to come back.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. Anyways, yeah, talking about species that you're in contact with, besides the reptilians, who else did you interact with on board the vehicle?
For me, it was mostly the reptilians. That's kind of who I was assigned to and worked with the most. But I'm trying to remember. I remember there was well, there were energetic beings that would come on board. And this was really interesting. And this is a lot of times why they do recruit very psychic people, because these energetic beings are able to come on board and they are not aware of it. The military is not aware of it at the time, but they come on board, basically scan to see what we're doing. And then they can then report back to other forces and give them intel. Because they didn't like a lot of the things that we did, because off planet, we are very much like we are on planet. We're violent. We try to take over. We, very much like we are here. Our personality doesn't change out in space as humans. And so there are a lot of species that aren't they're not exactly fond of us. I don't blame them. We try to take over quite a lot. And so these energetic beings would come on, or some people might call them higher vibrational beings, higher density beings, higher dimensional beings. And so I was able to sense when they were on craft. And I would usually try to get them to stay because I wanted to talk with them. I wanted to learn more about them, but they never did. They always kind of moved along because obviously they're coming in to get information and they want to get out as quickly as possible before they're detected by anyone else. So they did come on board occasionally. There was a being that I have a memory of that was blue, tall. I'm not sure where they were from. I just remembered this robe that they had, or this gown kind of thing they had on. The material was really interesting. It was almost like it it sparkled or twinkled almost, not even just sparkled. Like, we have stuff like rhinestones or, or sequins that would sparkle, but this was like a twinkling almost. It was almost like it was alive, which sounds very strange to say, but it twinkled like the stars in the night sky would twinkle. It had these just spots all over it that looked like, I guess you could say, the night sky would be the closest thing that twinkled. And it had this very iridescent kind of shimmering aspect to it. This was their clothing. What else do I remember? Grays. Well, grays were there too sometimes. Mostly reptilians was what we dealt with. And like I said, it was only occasionally that other beings would come on board, or I think when we went off and we're onto another planet, but I don't have any specific memories, so I don't want to make it up because I don't remember exactly what they were like, but mostly the reptilian beings is who I interacted with. I was good with them. They liked me.
Do you have any recollection of how long you were on board this vehicle, this ship?
I think it was possibly several different. Well, we've all kind of heard the 20 and back programs, and I think I had several of those actually. I don't have any proof of that, but it's just the feeling that I get. Now, the 20 and back I had a hard time with that before I had really, like, I had my own memories and I heard other people talking about it, but that one I had a really tough time with. Not the time travel. I can easily see that if we're interacting with, advanced beings, they're probably capable of time travel. So that one wasn't like a bad thing for me. Hey, Anthony. But it was the age regression that really I struggled with. And when I was in school, I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I did a lot of, even in high school, I took AP Bio. I did all advanced science courses. And so what I came to understand and remembered was it's not age regression in the way that it's just this magical machine that makes you now 18 again or what have you, but it's actually a machine that it's cellular regeneration. So basically it returns your cells back to the state that they were at when you were, say, 18. And we see kind of some of that technology starting to come to fruition now. We have certain treatments that can sort of rejuvenate your cells. So we have like the very beginnings of that starting to come about. And so I don't know exactly how it worked. I just remember right before undergoing it, I was asking them, well, what is this exactly? And they explained it to me. It's cellular regenerations. We're just going to heal your cells because as we get older, our cells start to deteriorate and decay. And
Right.
and so that was what it was. It's just regenerating our cells back to an earlier state.
So you retained your memories then. So we're talking about the metapods, right?
I did not retain my memories. No, a lot of this had to come back. I didn't, it wasn't until, like I said, the regression, I had no idea and didn't know anything about the secret space program. And once I had that, I had a very emotional reaction to it. And I should say a physical reaction, which was like, no, I don't want this. Absolutely not. This is the last thing that I ever want. And it took me quite a while to come to terms with it because I knew the memories felt extremely real, just like every other memory that I have felt very,
Right.
very real to me. But your logical mind is still like, no, that's not, like, that's ridiculous. That is not happening. And I still struggle with that from time to time. But aw, thank you so much. I still struggle with that sometimes, even though I have accepted it now and I understand it much more than I did then. And ever since I kind of stopped fighting against it, that's where memories have popped in occasionally, and a lot of times it's not when I'm expecting it. I will be watching something or like the assassin training kind of popped in when I spoke at a conference like 2 months ago, and I was preparing for the conference. They wanted my experiences, and I had never written them all out and put them in like a timeline. And so when I was doing this, that was when that kind of popped into my head, and I had this huge realization, like, oh, and the stuff all started to come back to me. So that's, I would say, more when you're so sweet, Renee. that's where a lot of this stuff was kind of coming into play. So I didn't have, the only thing I had was the school on the military base, which again, is more of the I don't know if that was the programming, or it probably was at that age, but it also could be, a lot of the times they'll take the kids from the bases and test their psychic abilities. So it could have been that as well. And I was just remembering it happening at an older age. I don't remember exactly what age it was at. I just know it was young. So that came back spontaneously without any of these other ones. So things were seeping through a little bit, but I just didn't understand what they were. And then once I had the regression, and once I really allowed myself to just, okay, let's dig into this and see what comes of it. What happens if I just accept this and go with it? And that's where a lot more stuff started to come through. So it took that initial kickstart of, it was actually the mantis beings, that mantis being. It was once I had that, and once I did the regression, and opened myself up to remembering, because you have to understand, when they program amnesia barriers in you. And that's at the very base level of programming, the alpha level. That's where they create your alters. They put amnesia blocks in place. They give your alters photographic memory and information attainment. You can get information very quickly and understand it. I do have that kind of in my regular life as well. So some of the stuff isn't necessarily, not all the programming is bad. So some of it is useful in your everyday life as well. So some of that has seeped over, and actually never was cut off from me, from kind of my base personality. Some of that I still have in my base personality as well. And I always just thought, well, that's just how I am. I didn't think anything of it at the time.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the mantis being encounter?
Yeah. I still don't know a whole lot because I didn't get to see it. But yeah, there was an interesting thing with that. So when I first woke up, and it was so real. I was expecting the mantis and the grays to be standing there. And I was just kind of I wasn't scared of them, but I was startled because it was strange. I didn't have any other experiences like this. And so I was like, where are you? I was literally looking around the room for them. And I couldn't get this image out of my head for several days. And so finally I was like, you know what? I am just going to draw this image out, because I had that one image, and I think I was laying on a table based on my perspective, because I could see I was laying on something, because I could see the two little grays peeking up like this from a table or something. And then I could see the mantis being kind of behind them, and the wall was sort of curved. I know it sounds very stereotypical, right? But I couldn't see the lights. I could just see that it was illuminated coming up from the floor. Oh, thanks, Bob Ross. I didn't know he was here. How nice. So I drew it out. And as I was drawing it, so the mantis being was wearing this long kind of burgundy robe. It had a V neck, and there were these gold stripes on the inside of the V. And so I was drawing out the gold stripes, and I heard in my head, no, that's wrong. And I was like, okay, that was really strange. And so then I got this flash of what they should look like. It was a thick one in the middle, then a thin one on either side of it. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess we're drawing it that way. So I erased everything and, drew it out and colored it out. And I was just kind of like, well, I have no idea why I just did that and why that was so important, but I did. And then a couple years later, I was speaking with, I think it was Denise Stoner, who works for MUFON. Those that don't know Denise, she's amazing. She and Kathleen Martin wrote a book together. And I was telling her about this. I was like, yeah, it's the weirdest thing. This robe was so important for some reason. I don't know why. I had to get the gold stripes right. And she was just like, well, that is really interesting. I know someone who had an encounter with a mantis being who was wearing a robe, just like you described, which had gold stripes on it. And I was like, that is interesting. And so then years and years later, I was talking with Samantha Mowat, who was another experiencer, and I told her the same story. I was like, I'm not sure what that was. And she said that very thing. She goes, yes, that designates their rank. or designates a class. So they might be a priest class, or they might be, whatever their different class systems are. I honestly don't know a ton about the mantis beings. I know that they're healers. I know that they're very intellectual, but that's pretty much my knowledge on the mantis beings, other than I liked it. I wasn't afraid of it. It had good energy coming from it. Hey, how are you? So that was interesting. So the robe that plagued me while I was drawing it came into play later, and it was able to be validated by other people. And then I was also looking online at images of mantis beings in robes, and there are several of them that are burgundy or purple or maroon or the same kind of color family. Some do have the gold on the neckline too. It was really interesting. So that was a weird kind of synchronicity, I guess, that we could say. That came into play later. It was validated by other people.
I've actually heard stories of the Nordic class of alien life having a V-shaped neckline. So that's also one.
Yeah.
And it's indicative in the true sightings of a Nordic. They'll have that V. I don't know if that is some type of designation of rank, or if that's just a style. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's in every single documented event or encounter that I've heard of, where they've got that little V cut out. So that's very interesting what you said about the V neckline.
Yeah, because it was definitely it was something that was a focus.
Have you ever come across any life forms that had a hood, a black hood?
I have not, though. I've talked to many experiencers who have. Some are reptilians, some are grays. A lot of times it's more the tall grays, though I have occasionally heard people report about it with short grays. And no, I'm trying to think. Not really mantis. Mostly reptilian and grays, from what I can remember, or sometimes Arcturians as well. I've also heard of them having hoods. Now, I have had some interactions with Arcturians, but not the regular, or like not the typical Arcturians. The Arcturians that I have had interactions with were actually, I think they were maybe a higher dimensional, because they were more energy beings. They weren't humanoid in any way. They were just kind of these undulating masses of energy.
Unidentified S4 Anthony says, I have seen them with a black hood. The reason why I mentioned this is because I've seen, I haven't personally seen, but my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, saw a creature with a black hood and a black robe, and it was about 6.5 feet tall.
Interesting. So that's why did she see it? She didn't see the face or anything, though?
No face. She did see that the robe was extended out toward the back, like it was pushed out toward the back. And like maybe there was a tail.
I was going to say it might have been a reptilian.
And she said later she recalled, about 2 months later, she recalled the hands were scaly and had really long claws.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there,
a lot of times they'll wear
3 fingers.
Oh, that's interesting. That's different. But yeah, a lot of times reptilians will wear hoods, or like some people will call them shapeshifters. They're not actually shapeshifters. They're very psychic, and they can project themselves to look any way they want to you. And so oftentimes they'll wear the hood, or they'll project themselves as human, so they don't scare you, because they recognize that their appearance can be extremely frightening to people.
Okay, you mentioned something a little bit earlier about where your clothes were on inside out and maybe backwards. Have you heard of that happening to other people?
Yes. Oh yeah, that's it's really, really common. Not just with children. It happened to me when I was a kid. But yeah, I mean, I've talked with adults that happens too. Mostly, I think more when it comes to interactions with ET beings. A lot of my interactions, like I don't like to use the word abduction, but my abduction experiences are more my lab anymore. But when it comes to ET beings, yes, sometimes that happens. And I don't know if it's just that they don't know exactly how they're supposed to go on, or I wonder if maybe sometimes they're leaving clues to see if people figure it out. Curious about that. But yeah, so that does happen a lot.
It
Or
actually
so I've heard
happened
of
to
people
me.
wearing somebody else's pajamas. Did it?
Yeah, it happened to me back in the 90s.
Yeah.
I woke up with my shorts on inside out and wrong side too. And I know I didn't go to sleep that way.
Yep.
And that was the same night that my ex saw the large being in the black hooded outfit.
Interesting. Oh, and so maybe
So
you have reptilian interactions as well.
I don't know yet. I'm looking into going under regression.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to do a regression session live on the
Oh,
channel.
oh, that's
Something I
great.
thought would be interesting to do, and I'm willing to do it. And I do have a friend that is a licensed hypnotherapist who
Yeah,
treats alien experiencers. So
amazing.
that would be really something interesting to do. Have you had any reoccurring events recently?
Hmm. Yeah, I had in February. So I still wake up with bruises. So I've done this my whole life. Bruises or puncture marks. I have pictures of a bunch of them. All I woken up with puncture marks in the shape of triangles or puncture marks in the shape of an X. I woke up last December with a huge puncture mark right in my neck. Um, but in February, I had, and a lot of times, even the MyLab experiences, you will remember as dreams. Sometimes they will come. They are able to psychically come to you in a dream. Think of it as like almost like remote viewing while you're sleeping. So they can come to you in your dream and influence you in that sense. And so in February, I was sleeping and very, very lucid dream. I knew I was awake, or I mean, I knew I was asleep. I was very aware of it. And there was a man behind me and very close, like uncomfortably close. And I like my personal space. And this guy was right here. He was right in my ear and he started humming a tune. And I don't know who this man was. He was an older gentleman, started humming this music and it sounded very creepy to me. I don't know what it was. And then he walked around behind me, came to my, and he was humming the whole time, leaned into my left ear, still humming. And as he was doing this, my breathing started to change and it was getting like these short, jagged breaths. I was like, like this, and was having trouble breathing. And then I realized my physical body was actually doing it too. Like I felt myself actually doing it, my physical body. And so I was just like, nope, I knew what was going on. I knew he was trying to trigger me. And I was like, absolutely not. Woke myself up and just kind of had to like like catch my breath. And then I went back to sleep and that was probably about 3 a.m. And when I woke up, I had a puncture mark in my wrist. There was and still is a lump right where that puncture mark was, almost like something was injected. It feels like it's in the vein. It's still there. You know, it feels like it's there because you can kind of move it around a little bit, but so I had that, and then I had a bruise on the bottom of my foot, which was a little strange. That was the most recent one that I remember happening. I think, I mean, I thought I stopped it, but I probably didn't since I woke up with a like an IV like puncture mark in my wrist. I don't think I stopped it. I obviously must have gone somewhere. So maybe what I remember was the very end of it. I'm not quite sure.
Do you think that was my lab connected, or do you think that was ET connected?
No, it was my lab for sure. Because
Okay,
the ET wouldn't trigger me that way.
I know a lot of people experience abductions and they think that they're alien in nature and they just might be governmental in nature. I
Mhm.
know that when Roger Lear was removing a lot of those
Yeah.
objects from people, he would come up with RFID chips, and those
Mm,
are man-made.
yep.
So how did they get into the human body other than through manipulation by humans?
Mhm.
So the fake abductions by the government are still happening then, correct?
Yes. Yes. Oh, very much
Yeah.
so. And
So
there are ETs that work with them. So that's why
right.
they could be remembering an ET. Plus, they also now have the technology to implant screen memories. So they could just be remembering it as an ET abduction, but it's a screen memory and they actually were having my lab encounters.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'd like to go into is your therapy with some of these people that you've worked with.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on any cases that you're willing to share with us?
Um, Not any specifics, just because I don't want to tell anybody's story without their permission. But I can say,
Right.
they've talked with me about almost everything imaginable, from other, people who have had MyLab experiences to, galactic councils and dragon beings and kind of amorphous beings like these blob beings and energetic beings and going to see different planets and yeah, all kinds of different everything you could imagine just about at this point. I've heard. I get very excited when there's something I haven't heard, something that's new. I always love it because I'm like, oh, this is a new one for
Right.
me.
We got lucky enough to speak to Debbie Jordan Cobble, who
Hmm.
was depicted in the book Intruders as Kathy Davis,
Yeah.
and she is famous for having a fetus taken,
Mm-hmm.
and then shown a like a 6-year-old or 7-year-old child later on that
Yeah.
was hers.
Yeah.
So do you hear much about that?
Yes, lots of hybrid program experiences. It's actually much more common than people realize that it is. Yep, that happens. I talk with women who are physically pregnant when they shouldn't be, or have no way of becoming having had or have become pregnant. Women who are menopausal who become pregnant. So there should be no way possible for them to become pregnant. And then it can vary between 3 weeks and 3 months. I've heard different, depending on. I don't know if it depends on the species or the woman. I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume the different species have different technologies that they use. But yep. Um, Oftentimes the fetus will be removed and then it's kind of grown in this sort of growth chamber. I haven't seen this myself personally, so this is just going off of the information that I've gathered from a lot of people. And men are involved in the hybrid programs too. Not they don't become pregnant, but their reproductive material is used, let's say.
Right.
And they have also, have had a couple that have told me they have been introduced to their hybrid children as well. Some, I mean, we have some that are, really well known. Geraldine Orozco, who was just like one of the sweetest human beings in the world. And she is like met, I can't even remember at this point how many she said, like 30 or 40 hybrid children. That's also not that uncommon because you got to realize if they're only, incubating for 3 weeks and they start when you start menstruating, basically when you become fertile, a lot of these
Right.
programs start and they
Right.
go well past menopause. You can have quite a lot of children. So yeah, it's actually a really common thing. And there are different reasons that people say that these ETs have told them that they're involved with this program. And I don't know if it's again species dependent perhaps, but yeah, different I've been shown, and I don't remember pregnancies or anything like that, but I've been shown 2 full grown, I would say young adult reptilian hybrids and told they were mine. I don't remember anything more than that, so I don't know, but yeah, it's actually really, really common.
Do you know what the reason is behind the hybridization programs?
I don't. I know that we hear like kind of most often we'll hear, especially with the grays, that either there's some sort of genetic issues that that they've kind of evolved over and sometimes it's they want to incorporate more of an emotional kind of aspect to their being. There might be there's something that they're trying to overcome or integrate into their physicality that we have that they don't. So whatever that might be, yeah, that's more often than not. Or sometimes you'll hear they've lost the ability to reproduce, and so this is one way of going about it. Or they're trying to, I don't know if they're trying to reintegrate that ability. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it's interesting. It's a really interesting phenomenon.
But reptilians, that's a first. I've never actually heard of a hybrid program with the reptilians. So
Yeah, it's not.
that's
There aren't as
very
many, but
interesting.
there are some. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah,
I,
it's interesting.
have you heard about the connection between CERN and a gateway to uh, the Draco planet,
I have
where
not
they
heard
come
that.
from?
I have
Okay,
not.
well, it's supposedly an open gateway to
Hmm.
where they can travel into our space um, directly. And I thought
Hmm.
maybe you had heard about that, maybe in your MyLab experiences.
No, I mean
Okay,
they have the ability to do it themselves, so I don't know that they would need it. But not to say that it's not true. I just haven't heard of it.
right. Okay. Um, do you have anything else you'd like to tell us?
Um, I don't think so. I think that's, I mean, we covered a good portion of it. I would say, keep an open mind when it comes to experiencers. I know a lot of this stuff is really kind of difficult to swallow and almost seems unbelievable, but a lot of these experiences are worthwhile to listen to. Doesn't mean you have to accept them. But there's a lot to be gained from it. And I've learned so much talking with as many experiencers as I have, and it really opened my
Right,
mind up to a lot of possibilities. And I think we have to remain open. We have to keep that open mind. Otherwise, we never learn, we never grow. And so, even if it seems unbelievable, just be open to the possibility, because you can't prove that it's not true, even if there's no proof. And that's the thing we hear time and time again as experiencers: where's the proof? Where's the proof? Where's the proof? There is no proof. I have no proof. But I've used this example before, which is like, we've all walked past a restaurant and smelled French fries, but you can't prove to me that you had that experience on a certain day. There's no proof, but it's an experience that you had. And
right.
so try to remain open, talk to people. You don't have to believe it, but at least be open to listening, and just, allow that this is their experience. And you can go with the, I believe that you believe it's true kind of routine, if that makes you feel better. But
Right.
just stay open to it, because you never know what's true. It's an interesting world out there, and there's so much more to it than people realize. And I've seen that firsthand. Now, almost like I've lived in two different worlds at the same time, seeing sort of the behind the scenes black op program stuff
Right.
that's going on, and then the kind of everyday reality that most of us live in. There's so much more than anybody even can begin to realize.
I gotta say, from everything that you've told us here in the live show, I think you should write a book. You should put this
I
information out
everybody
there.
Yeah, everybody keeps saying that to me. I don't know. I think about it, it's it involves a lot more people than just myself. And so that would be the only thing that I would be hesitant
Right.
about. Um, because it's not just my story. So, it
Right.
involves a lot of other people. So that I would maybe consider doing it under a pen name of some sort.
Right. A
Um,
fiction, maybe.
yeah, so something along those lines. But yeah, it is definitely like something out of a movie. I do understand that. It sounds a little crazy, but hey, that is my life, I guess.
I think your stories are very compelling
Hmm.
and more information than I've heard recently. And I want to thank you very much for that information. Everybody that's out there in the chat room, thank you for coming. But one thing I got to tell you, you got to
Hmm.
go over to her channel, Rebellious Ufology. Check it out. Watch her content. Give her a like or two. Subscribe to her channel. Let's get her up over 1,000. That way she can be monetized. We got to get her message out. It's very important. If you're looking for her online, this is her logo, Rebellious Ufology. Very clever name. I really like
Thank
that.
you.
Please check out Rebellious Ufology and give her a sub. Um, I want
Thank
to
you.
thank everybody who is a subscribed member on my channel. There's Jennifer Adamick, Jeff Garvey, Mr. D.B. Cooper, Occam's Razor, Surgery 68, Nanine 001, Donna McFadden, Dab6 Gamer, Too Much Information, Trevor Williams, Melanie Stark, April Eggerts, Kevin Slayton, Jenny Stark, Randall Schick, Tyler Murphy, and Cedric Salzmeyer. If you are interested in joining our channel, it's $1.99 a month. You get cool emojis and badges, and you get a shout out in every live stream. One thing we want to advertise so that everybody is aware of this, on Thursday next week, when we usually have a UFO men episode, we are going to have a UFO man episode where we are going to be featuring Caroline Corey, the director, producer, and writer affiliated with Ancient Aliens and the show The Unexplained featuring William Shatner. She's going to be introducing her film A Tear in the Sky. It came out on May 3rd. We will have exclusive footage. So come by and take a look at that. We want to tell Lynn we welcome her back anytime on our channel. We can get deeper into the subject. And maybe next time we won't lose Tommy due to the internet. So we want to thank you for being here. We want to thank everybody in the chat room for participating and everybody who participated online. And thanks to Thomas Fessler for the super chat. Okay, so from myself, good night. And from Lynn, you want to?
Thank you, everyone.
All righty. We're going to say good night and good evening.